So, hi, this is Shilpa here, and welcome to my video this month. Now, since the last few weeks, we've had some wonderful discussions on our Argenta mentoring program with a few cases that have, where we're speaking about and solving them by repertorizing predominant mental cases. And most of these cases are what I call fall under stage 3. Now, if you want to find more details on the stages and the use of these stages templates to simplify your practice, then you download the book which is on this page called When Your Favorite Approach Does Not Work. Having said that, a stage 3 case are those cases where there is a good balance of mental and physical symptoms, and more often than not, there is a strong correlation between the mind and the body. So in most cases, you find an emotional symptom which is a causative factor for a physical complaint or even a physical pathology, right? And unlike a straightforward physical case where, I love the Bonninghausen approach, and these are the cases where you can basically just solve taking a few, location, sensation, modality, and concomitants and just use your basic Bonninghausen approach. But these cases where you have predominant mental symptoms, they can be super overwhelming. And this is something I've certainly fought in the past when I was a new graduate, right? And it's very easy to lose your way in the mind. And you have to constantly ensure that the core essence of your patient is accurately represented in your repertorization. Now, I've seen how it can be super confusing, and I'm watching new students and practitioners go around in circles. And this video, I'm going to give you a very simplified process to work on that. All right. Actually, I'm going to give you the 3 common mistakes you can avoid that will make it a lot easier for you. Right. So the first step is, which is a mistake number 1, is if you're trying to do the case analysis on your own. Now, you want to find a central understanding of your patient's mental state before you can ever try and enter these symptoms in your repertorization sheet, right? We all know this is filtration and distillation process is very critical before you can enter your case into the repertorization sheet. If you skip this step, there's a very high chance that you will lose your remedy. So the number 1 mistake students do is that basically they try to analyze this case by themselves, and it can lead to interpretation and prejudice, because if you sit down and do the analysis on your own after the patient's gone, you are basically really going to go around in circles, right? So you don't want to sit there and do the analysis by yourself after the patient is gone. The trick is to get help from none other than your patient right during the consultation itself. So you want your patients to actually help you. The great thing about us is, a homeopathic case is like you have this one-on-one connection with your patient. You have this time with your patient. And it basically makes it easy to interact and create a relationship with your patients, right? So the last part of your case taking or your consultation should actually be used for a case analysis. So most people simply passively just collect symptoms and think that's the end of the case taking process. It's not. It's an incomplete process. I remember I used to do that all the time in medical school when I was beginning. I wrote and wrote and wrote these pages and pages of information from clients with predominant mental symptoms. And I had a pretty good idea and a case-taking template to work with, right? So I knew what was needed, what questions to ask, but what happened was I wasn't analyzing them using my patient. I wasn't maneuvering the questions to get to the bottom of each symptom, and I wasn't making those connections there with the help of my patients. And that made everything a lot harder. So if the supervisor was really good and he would find those connections and make the prescription, but what I would get was all these raw, crude mental symptoms. And at the end of the day, if the supervisor wasn't available, I had to sit down and I have to make sense of all that and convert them into, sizable rubrics. Now, this is extremely difficult, and you are open to a lot of interpretations at that point, and you can fail. So I find that students put these now you have repertorization programs. I used to do paper repertorizations then. But today, what I see is people get these 10, 20, 30 symptoms and put that all inside the program. So their sheets look absolutely chaotic. It's all confused, it's all over the place. Different things are, different types of rubrics are under some remedies, there is a patchiness in that repertorization sheet. And going forward, I learned the process of case analyzing during the case taking process from some of my incredible teachers using the Kenton approach during the case taking process itself. So you're actually boiling down the whole case understanding or the whole mental state understanding to basic core components during the case taking process itself. Today I teach this process in my mentoring program and my courses as we move along, where they basically boil down these symptoms into core components with the help of your patients. So let me give you an example. Say you basically conduct an interactive, you've taken all the patient complaints, and at the end of the case taking, you are now conducting the fine-tuning process, right? Where you finish that listening phase, and now the patient stopped talking, and now you want to actually go and ask the patient a series of questions until you come to the basic core, right? So say we have a case now, and your patient has come with PCOD, right? Polycystic ovarian disease. And now you get all the details of their mentals, their physicals, and you find this patient has key issues with people, with her loved ones, with her mother, with her daughter, with her friends. She's emotional in lots of stories that you have, but you realize that she's either angry or upset or unloved and sad at different times, right? However, during the fine-tuning process, you realize there's a pattern. She has a problem with most relationships that are close to her. And in every situation, she feels let down. And the way she expresses is that she withholds love as a way of punishment. So this now becomes your key mental state. And it's a lot easier to do it this way rather than having different symptoms like angry, sadness, disappointments, because then you can gather so many things. Well, together, you know that there is this core now that you can work with, because we suffer from this syndrome, the curse of prejudice and interpretation in homeopathy. And it is this idea that your mind immediately starts sort of analyzing a patient's reaction based on what you think you would do in that situation. And it's really hard to be unprejudiced if you're a beginner, because you're learning. And what you really want to do is get your patient and get the answers and get the interpretations and then put it down into 3 or 4 sentences. And so with that interactive process, at the end of a case-taking process, you are asking for their feelings and connecting the dots with them, and you get these core components, right? And that's much more easier to get it with the help of your patient rather than in your own head. That's the important part of this process, right? So now we come to mistake number 2. And that is putting tons and tons of rubrics into your repertorization sheet. Now, as I've mentioned before, you have now got to break your core understanding, these 5 to 6 sentences that you get from your patient, into 5 to 6 basic components or rubrics. So you have to step back and look at these 4 or 5 sentences and start looking at what would be 4 or 5 big, broad, general rubrics that will cover the state, right? So basically, what you're really getting are these broad concepts or these large rubrics. In some cases, you might need 7, right? But no more than that. 3 to 6 is the sweet spot. And in general, you want to just say, for more practical reasons, put it into 5 rubrics. And if you're getting beyond that, you'll not have the core understanding of your patient. If you need 12, 14, 15 rubrics, you are probably using way too small specific rubrics that's going to scatter your case. You are at a risk of losing your indicated medicine in this process. So the best way is to step back, combine similar rubrics together, restrict to 5. So let's come back to this patient and see what are the 5 component rubrics or the 6 component rubrics that we've got here. And what we have is disappointment in love, punishment, tendency to withhold, hormonal disturbances, and PCOD. So can you see how? So this is basically what you're doing here. is you are basically breaking these parts down. So you know everywhere, this is the key component, that she feels let down and disappointed, and basically it's around love people. She withholds because she does not communicate at that particular point in time, or she's suppressing her emotions at that particular time, or what she feels. So she doesn't really go and blast out. And then you have problems. So the connection is important. The mind-body connection is so important. You have to have the hormonal disturbances because this is the cause and that's the effect at a physical level. And then it comes and creates a pathology. So there's one more layer added to this patient, and there is a pathology being created. So this whole sequence is now going to be a part of her state. And now if I look at the repertorization, is I have basically broken it down into just 5 components. So what I've done here is, if you can see, I've used love as a common theme, and in this love aspect I have basically used disappointed love. Then I've used love as a mirrorless themes from complete repertory, and it will cover all aspects of love for me. Then I've used punished. Again, in this punished, I've actually used a lot of different rubrics. Punishment elements from aggravates, punishment as aggravation, or delusion that she's punished. So there are lots of aspects. Everything is around punishment here because she feels punished, and the way she does to others is also punishing them in a way. So that's that's the word. If my patient uses that word, that's a very important word, and that's what I've used in the other one. And then I have this aspect about the way to withhold things within her. That's a bit of suppression and control. So this is the way she actually controls the aspects, the emotional aspect, and the way she behaves with other people. So again, control and suppression are a very important part of our mental state. So you can see how easy it is. Once you know that these are the main parts of your patient, when you know that these are the main aspects, these are the 5 main parts, you can basically easily convert them into rubrics because you need these big, broad themes. You don't want those small, specific rubrics which have only 3 or 4 remedies. And if you do have such and you want to use them, then combine them. Combination is the best thing you can ever do when you have these smaller rubrics. And then I have to have a physical general. And so what I've used here is Jeremy Sherr's QREP is wonderful because it just gives you a big broad rubric called female hormones, disturbance of pathology associated with that. So I use that basic general rubric here, which is interesting because it's a repertoire of mental qualities, but this beautiful symptom, a mind-body connecting symptom, comes up there. And then I use the physical pathology as well, which is tumor, cysts, ovary as a big one. Now, the choice to use a pathological rubric remains. I could just stick with mentals and physicals, and that's fine. But if there is a pathology created, I want to make sure that my remedy covers the pathology if there is a good cleaning rubric, right? And so if I take the multi sheet, you want to by default use remedies that cover all my symptoms. That's very important, all my symptoms, and these are the remedies that come up here. So now that's coming to the third mistake, is people choose the first remedy that comes up in the repertorial analysis. Now you've got to think about repertorization process as a way to lead you to about a group of remedies. You could have a group of 5, 10, 15 most indicated remedies that cover almost all symptoms, and they are all equal. So you want to be able to choose a function in repertorization just the way I did here, was that you include all these rubrics, all these rubrics together, and all these remedies should cover it by default. You do not want your process to give you one single remedy that covers all symptoms. Something's wrong if that happens. In fact, you don't want to think about having a repertorization where you end up with the final prescription right in the sheet. If you are filtering out the top 10 or 15 remedies that cover all your top 5, all your components, this is what your repertorization needs to do for you. And now you go and look for these remedies, your individual remedies, into the Matra Medica and get the final decision, right? So even here, do not ever aim to get a perfect simillimum. It's an excuse to procrastinate, because it will never be perfect, because here we are looking at one part of the story, one thread of this person, emotional, physical, causative factor that has come and created this particular pathology. That is one part of the patient's story. In a linear case, that's all you get. But if there is a multiple pathologies, not every pathology or not every set of symptoms are related to this cause. They could be related to different causes, and there are different layers, right? So it's important. What you find here is you focus on one important trait, and then you really, if you want to create an impact with your knowledge and gifts of homeopathy, leave the concept of a particular simillimum that covers everything on all layers together. You just think of getting your first best prescription for your case, for a problem the patient has come for. Let's call it your version 1. Okay, so that's the remedy. It's the remedy to get the best outcome in the right direction, and you get the patient the confidence and get yourself the confidence that they come back, and get them to give you more feedback later on. So you get your first prescription out there and then let it unfold, and in your follow-ups you'll find more information, and they'll come with other problems that they want to resolve, and then you go and move on from there. Or sometimes that first remedy will do something, and then you have to give another remedy, which is the next best version, right? So in this case, for example, look at the 5 or 6 important remedies that have covered everything. And what we have is aurum, lyco, platina, lachesis, arsenic, conium, cars, thuya, lilium, tig. Now, if I didn't know this, I would have given natramur or ignatia or some other remedy if I was just using my medical knowledge. But look at that. They do not cover the pathology. And that's okay, because our clinical rubrics might not be the best rubrics out there. They could miss out on some important remedies here. In that case, you do say go and give natramur to this lady, but say the cyst doesn't go away, and then you can come back and look at, all right, let's look at what are the remedies that cover the cyst, and then you give a complementary remedy to natramur. You gave a carcinosin, or you give an aurum, or you give aurum mu natricum. Does that make sense? So it's like you basically are then covering the pathology as well, and then you complete the cure for that particular layer, right? And that's what we are looking at here. So coming back to what we were talking about, remember, you don't have to be perfect, and in most of the highly successful cases, it has been a series of remedies that have created an impact in my patient. And even working with some of the most successful practitioners in my life, I have seen that a majority of their cases need multiple remedies. The one remedy miracles are what you see in the seminars, but that's not real life. Don't get me wrong, I love those one remedy cure cases that we present in the seminars. They make homeopathy so fascinating, worthwhile, and magical. But real life homeopathy and real success is when you learn what to do when you do not get those miracles. So remember, don't be perfect. You can always be better. I call this my classical strategy at stage 3. I train students to make the best first prescription and then peel layers and move on and create a sustained success. And so here are my 3 mistakes that you avoid. Don't analyze a case by yourself. Get your patient to help you. Don't put tons of rubrics in your sheets. Break it down into maximum 5 big rubrics. Don't choose the first remedy that comes up in your analysis. Something's wrong there. You have to choose a group of medicines and find the best indicated medicine and get going. Get your version 1. You can always make it better. The first remedy is going to give you some immediate outcome and get them to come back, or get them moving to a particular stage and give them the confidence to come back. You can always make it better and better. That's it for this week. I would love if you could scroll down and leave a comment here. Now tell me, what are the mistakes that you have made? Have you made some of these in your past? I would like to know how you repertorize. And let's go work on our mistakes this week and get our patients better. That's it from me. Thank you very much.